Hey, what's up? Sean Dustin, Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. In this episode, it's basically getting to know me and what I'm trying to do. This podcast is going to be about people like you, everyday average people, how they get through struggles or bottoms in their life, whether it's weight loss, addiction, PTSD, anything that the average human goes through, because we all have low points in our life. We all struggle. We all fight demons, within ourselves. And I want to know how you get through them. And I want you, if you get something out of this or you resonate with what I'm doing, hit me up. Send me an email. And if I like your story, I'll have you as a guest and we can talk about it. Another segment of the podcast is going to be about dating and relationships. I'm a single dad in the dating pool. I do online dating, and I am going to start trying to go back to the old school way of doing things, which means actually going and talking to people, talking to women, wherever single women are, they're all over the place, but nobody ever knows because guess what? We're all so stuck in a environment in ourselves with which we can't even, acknowledge other people that are walking by because we're so busy in our own heads and our own minds and our own lives. So this is basically going to be I would guess trying to figure out how to navigate this world that we're in now, the digital world that has everybody looking down at their phones all the time. How are you supposed to engage with that if you're trying to break away from that? That's what I really want to try and explore. So if any of this sounds interesting to you and, you want to have a crack at giving your opinion or talking about your issues with it, you can. And you can contact me at nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook, which is first name Nowhere to Go, last name But Up Now. Don't laugh. I didn't even realize that that's how that was going to play out until I went on Twitter and looked for my Twitter handle, and my Twitter handle is at But Up Now. So, go figure. I'm also on Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. There will be a Patreon and a website following at some point down the road, but not yet. So, without further ado, enjoy the episode, and hope to hear from you. Peace. Welcome to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today is the first episode, and I'll be going over why I want to start a podcast, why I think I should start a podcast, and kind of what qualifies me to talk to anybody about anything. You'll have to excuse me. I currently have a cold and took the day off of work, which seems to be the only way I can get anything done these days. Monday through Friday with commuting and 8-hour shift. I mean, that takes up about 12 hours of my day. So sometimes when you're feeling under the weather and or sometimes when I'm feeling under the weather and I need to get something done, I'll use that as an opportunity. Some may say, well, you need to make money. Well, yeah, money, you do need to make it, but you also need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and doing the things that you need to do, or else what's the point of working? So back to my original reason for doing this episode is to get you a little familiar with me and who I am, what I want to do, what I'm thinking about doing, what I'd like to see happen, and basically just letting you know, like I said, a little bit about myself. So I'm 45, union tradesman, a mechanical insulator by trade. Been doing that for about 12 years. I'm a father to a almost 2-year-old daughter. She's 21 months right now. And it'll be 2 in August. I currently co-parent with her mother. That relationship didn't work out. Amongst a lot of the other ones that have failed as well. And trust me, we'll be getting to those issues at some point. So I'm in construction. I have a daughter. I have a record. I think from 2004 until 2006, I was incarcerated. So I'm a formerly incarcerated individual. I always consider myself a ex-convict or ex-felon, whatever. But I was recently corrected when I talked to somebody who's in the social justice warrior world. And he's like, oh, well, we don't refer to ourselves that way anymore. We are formerly incarcerated people. Okay. However, so I really have no experience in this type of medium, this type of platform. I'm a consumer of podcasts. I listen to probably close to about 10 different ones. I cycle through. A lot of my influences came from Rogan, and I'm sure he's touched more than just me. I'm not unique to that. But from listening to him, directed me into other directions, from other people, Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson. And those people kind of resonated with me because the mind is a crazy place. And I don't know, through my experiences, I've noticed that, everything starts with your mind. You want to do something, you think about it. You think about what the steps you need to take to get to that place. You research. And through that research, hopefully you come to a place where you, A, can actually proceed forward and get closer to that goal, or B, you just say, hey, you know what? The time that I'm going to have to put into this versus the effort versus the reward, it's just not feasible for me. And you figure out that that's not what you want to do. That's just kind of generally how I would think that things work, in the mind. But it doesn't always work like that for everybody. There are a lot of different environmental factors that help to kind of form an individual. And sometimes, vital information that needs to be passed on doesn't get passed on, whether, your parents are divorced, and that interaction that you need to get, father, son, mother, daughter, whatever the situation is, a lot of vital information gets passed on. And when there's not two in the household, I guess, and I'm kind of getting off into a tangent a little bit, or not a tangent, but sort of like a rant. I myself grew up in a split home. I think my parents got divorced when I was 5, and we, did the whole. It wasn't 50-50. She had sole custody, so he would get to see me every other weekend, and that went on for a while. But there was a lot of things that got lost in the translation, I guess you could say, that I didn't get from having a male role model in my home. Not to mention, I was a latchkey kid, so I basically would go to school, come home, and my mom worked in San Francisco at the time, so I had free reign. No supervision, no direction, no anything. Just whatever I wanted to do, I did. And that really didn't serve me very well into adulthood, because it just transferred. It transferred straight over, and I went through life for the first 30 years, 33 years, whatever it was, kind of running my life the same way I did when I was, third grade through high school. And there was involvement with the law, as a juvenile. Got turned over as a ward of the state because my mom couldn't control me. I was declared incorrigible, and that started a kind of like a long in and out situation of institutions. It wasn't her fault. Everything. Let me just put a disclaimer out there right now. Anything that I've ever gotten into or gotten involved in, or consequences, though I was the one who did those things. Nobody forced me to do anything. I made some bad decisions, and I continued making bad decisions because I was lazy. I didn't want to work. I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do. Having a routine and a steady job was, always got in the way of my other activities. Excuse me, which is like partying and, women, strippers, what, you name it. That could make you feel good, other than, actually doing positive crap that would make you feel good, I got involved in. So, any struggles that I've been through in my life were all self-inflicted. So, there's no, my mom wasn't to blame, my dad wasn't to blame. Yeah, sure, they made some mistakes, and I witnessed some things, and grew up in a household that wasn't the best example of how to be in a healthy relationship with the opposite sex. But everything else, it was just kind of, things, I can't blame my mom. She had to work. She did the best that she could for us, with what she had and with what she knew, and the little bit of help that, she got from my dad. Financially, through child support, which he paid until I was 18. It's kudos to him, because there's a lot of guys out there that want to not pay for their children. But mine did. And I pay for mine as well. And we'll get to that. So I jump around a little bit. I'm working on that. I'm trying to figure out how to narrow my thought, because I'm just sort of all over the place sometimes. I'll talk about one thing, it'll lead me to somewhere else, and then boom, bam, I'm everywhere. So hopefully, in doing a podcast, I can help sort of refine how I think and how to sort of train my brain a little bit to stay on one subject, finish it out, and then move on to another one. I don't think that's an inherent thing. I think that's a trained thing, because most people are this, kind of operate the same when it comes to certain stuff. So, anyways, grew up a latchkey kid. No supervision, and I just sort of carried that out through the rest of my life until I was 33. In and out of institutions, from a juvenile all the way up to that point. I think I counted it once, and it had to be 18 different jails and institutions, rehabs, drug rehabs, because I had a problem with methamphetamine from a young age. Not Ritalin. I was undiagnosed, but I was definitely ADD. I had a lot of incidences in school as a young kid. That mixed with a divorce, and then all these other things. Parents using me to get back at each other, or one of my parents would use me to get you tug back and forth. So all of that, it was just, to me, it was like a perfect storm of things that were happening, and it was playing out in school. But back then, they didn't know anything about ADD. They didn't know anything about, how, I was never good in school. I couldn't pay attention. It was not interesting to me. I was always against the grain from as long as I can remember. I'm not a conformist at all. So, to control me in school, they would wrap my desk up in corrugated paper so I couldn't communicate with anybody. They'd put me in closets, face my desk in a closet because I was just the class clown. I liked to be funny. I was always joking around, and I couldn't concentrate. So I was undiagnosed ADD, and when I took meth, I didn't realize this when I was younger, and I actually didn't realize it until I'd stopped doing it, which was in 2010. And about 2 years, no, not even 2 years, I'd say in the last 5 years, as I've been sort of diagnosing my life, my issues, why I've done some of the things that I've done, and tried to, connect dots here and there. I kind of realized that when I was doing meth, I would zone in and focus on something 100% and carry it out until completion. And my problem is I spent a lot of time as a kid trying to figure out how to get out of doing shit. So when I became an adult, I carried that out, and it made me, what's the word I'm looking for? I focused a lot of my attention into criminal activities. And so, from selling drugs to doing white collar crime to carding, I was doing a lot of these things. And I would spend hours, like 3 days at a time, awake, working on something, go to sleep for a day, wake back up, eat, get high again, and start it all over until I completed whatever it was the task I was trying to master. Whether it's hanging paper, if you don't know what that means, doing fraudulent checks, making my own, to credit card fraud was a part of something, and I've gotten in trouble for this, so I can talk about it. I would make credit cards, press them out, make our own designs for banks, and get stuff off the dark web. All the numbers are all available. If you go onto the dark web, you can buy credit card dumps, which are just basically numbers and everything that you need, and you can press out your own. I mean, it's probably gotten a lot harder, but this was sort of, I don't know, maybe not in the beginning of when that became something. I think it was kind of beginning middle-ish. But suffice it to say, it was all in an attempt to not have to be responsible. It was all in an attempt to not have to go and get a 9-to-5 job. It was, casting conformity. I didn't want to fit in that box. I've always been that way. And, which really makes me susceptible to conspiracy theories. And a lot of them aren't theories; they're actual conspiracies. Theory gets thrown on the end of it to make people, automatically assume crazy. Which a lot of this shit is true. If you listen to enough things and you do your own research, you can definitely get into the history that isn't being told about America and other facets of U.S. and world history, civilization, stuff like that. But like I said, that's another podcast. So, going through this journey, as a latchkey kid, I just continued it, through on until I was 33, and from selling drugs to, which I was convicted of, in 2005, I believe, is when I got sentenced. I believe, yeah, it was in 2005, and it was in Nevada, which in Las Vegas. I had moved there. I bounced around a lot as a kid, between families. Before I got declared incorrigible. I spent time with my uncle. I spent time with my dad. He gave that a shot. Didn't work out. I just could not be contained. The latchkey kid, it just, when you don't have discipline as a child, and you don't understand that there are, in order to live in society, you have to kind of work within the framework, or it just, it doesn't work out. And when nobody's telling you that or showing you that, or, whatever it was with me, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the issue was. I have an idea, but I just know that not disciplining kids, not showing them how to be responsible, not teaching them how to be, members of society, is not probably the coolest thing to do. Like I see my daughter every day. I moved out and I got a place. Well, all right, let me back up again here. So, like I said, I keep making turns here while I'm trying to do one thing. Hopefully, it doesn't get too annoying, but like I said, I'm trying my best. So, latchkey kid, in and out of jails, institutions, rehabs. Probably went to like 3 different rehabs. went to prison in 2004, or got locked up in 2004. Excuse me, man. This cough is killing me. Got locked up in 2004 in Vegas. Went to and I had a state case for trafficking narcotics, and then I had a federal case because when I was out on OR on the state case, they released me. They charged me with five counts of trafficking methamphetamine because I sold to an undercover 5 times. Why they didn't just arrest me after the first one is, there's a reason, but it's a shady ass reason, that's for sure. You break the law once, you should be, they should arrest you then, not do it 4 more times just so they can stack the charges against you. And when you go to bail out, it's quadruple the price to get out. But since I didn't have a prior record, they let me out 3 days later on my own recognizance. And from that point on, I moved, and I was just like, you know what, fuck this. They're going to have to, catch me if you can. So I was just going to ride it till the wheels fell off. Moved, and like I said, those are probably most of this stuff. I'm not going to get too much into detail. Most of it, may come out in other podcasts that, if I get interviewed by somebody or I'm on someone else's podcast, maybe this will lead to that. I don't know. I just know from listening to other people's podcasts or ones that have just started, it just kind of, if you're interesting and you're talking about good shit, it's just going to eventually lead into you talking on other ones and vice versa. And that's what I'm hoping, at least. So got out in 2006, transferred back to my mom's, which is the Bay Area. I was born and raised in not San Francisco, but the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, in the east part of the Bay. And went back there, struggled, had PTSD, for sure, from being in prison. It is not a natural place to be. It's not a natural situation. It's a lot safer, I'd say, than county jail, but it's still, you can make one mistake and cause problems. I managed to get out without having to inflict too much violence on other people. When I was in county jail, I definitely had my share of fights and got jumped a few times. Realized that you couldn't just go in there and say, I'm going to mind my own business and do my time. It just doesn't work that way. At some point, you'll be confronted with the choice of, all right, well, who am I going to roll with? And for me, I grew up, if you look at me, I look straight up Hispanic or South American, definitely Latin. But since I've done my 23andMe, I found out that I'm actually 69% European, which would be Irish and German and maybe some Spanish. But I do not look it. Listening to me talk, you would automatically assume, oh yeah, this dude's a white dude for sure. But I don't look it. So in jail, or in prison, that's a conundrum, you could say, because the Mexicans, the nationals, they're called paisas. They're really small, and I'm a 6'1" dude. I weigh 235 at present, but back then I was probably like 220. I'm a pretty big dude, man. A decent sized linebacker. So of course, the Mexican nationals, the paisas, they wanted me on their side because a lot of them are really small. So, I'd be an asset to their army. And same with the Mexican gangbangers, the Sureños or the Norteños, just depending on whatever yard you landed on, they want me too. same thing. A lot of them are real small, and some of the bigger guys, they want to get on their side. Problem is I don't identify with any of them. And I knew that if I did that, there would be a good chance that I was going to get more time. And that's not what I wanted to do. I definitely didn't belong in prison. My worst crime was I was fucking lazy. I was just lazy. I didn't want to work. And I figured out how to game the system by selling drugs and doing other things. And that's what, ultimately led me in there. Plus, a lot of bad decisions and other shit, and lack of discipline as a youth, a lack of direction. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in school. I didn't get good grades in school at all. So, I didn't go to college, tried to go to college, just didn't work out. I was more interested in the chicks and everything that was going on outside of the classroom versus the classroom. And that was before cell phones and before, it's probably the beginning of cell phones, but it's definitely before the smartphone, which, is a major distraction now. So if I had tried now, maybe it'd be different, but I doubt it. I'm just not interested in it. So all of that, and I got out, like I said, PTSD, jumping around again, PTSD, because I did have to inflict some violence, and I ended up running with the whites because that's what I identify with. I grew up in a middle class neighborhood, not upper middle class, just sort of maybe lower, maybe just middle. When there was still a middle. Now it's upper or lower middle class. And there was a lot of white people. There was, the neighbors next door had a kid who was Filipino. My other friend was Portuguese, but he looked white. There was a black family, and then it was the rest just white people. And so I grew up like that. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. I'd consider myself third generation. So it was challenging, I guess. I never identified with Hispanic, other than the fact that I liked Mexican food. That's the only Latin, that I would ever acknowledge. And maybe it's because I got teased as a kid, so I was always, excuse me, I was always trying to not be who I was. I told a lot of stories, made up a lot of shit to try to make myself, feel like I was cooler. I think a lot of kids do that when, they grow up with their identity. They don't kind of know who they are or where they fit in. Got picked on a lot, so it was smaller. But I had a growth spurt, I believe, when I was 12 or 13, and I shot up, to about 5, 8, 9, 10. So all the people that used to pick on me, now I'm bigger than them, and definitely got my revenge, which is not what I would suggest. Violence doesn't solve anything, doesn't help anything. It's a deterrent, but it's not it's just too dangerous, man. And having had to inflict it on people in prison, I'm not an advocate for it. Even though I was a bully, it just doesn't solve anything. It causes more problems, and it shuts everything down. Nobody wants to engage in a or you know what I mean. If you're going to use violence as a resource, expect that nobody's going to want to engage with you. And I learned that the hard way after prison, because that mentality followed me out. And it hasn't been an easy journey, just because, I was raised in violence, and I kind of followed that out, and it's not something that I'm proud of. Um, I definitely have tried to curb that. Um, I don't engage in it anymore with other men. I just sort of take the high road now, or prevent situations from having, like, if it means, like, if I know if I'm going to go to a bar, I'm going to scope the place out and the loudest dude who's trying to show off, I'm going to stay away from them. Or anybody that's drinking excessively, I'm going to stay away from. Or I might just leave altogether. I'm not a heavy drinker. I'll have a beer or two. When I notice that I'm starting to catch a buzz, I'll usually stop. I don't like to drink. I'm a definite advocate for cannabis and marijuana. I believe, nothing bad is really ever come of someone getting too stoned, other than you get some good sleep. And you go to sleep full and you get a good sleep. I do use cannabis myself. That helped me in actually kicking a 7-year opiate habit. I got prescribed opiates for a knee problem, and it started out at 0.5 milligrams, and 7 years later I was getting 120 Percocets, and this was about last year is when I decided to kick that, and it was only because my my new doctor wanted me to drop a UA, and before, my old doctor never really tripped on it. He would just keep prescribing it to me, and I would have to take random UAs to make sure that it was in my system. But that's all he was checking for. This new doctor, when I had to switch doctors, this dude was searching for everything in my blood, so he wanted to know exactly what he was dealing with. And so he came back to me. He's like, "Hey, if you want to re-up your prescription, you're gonna have to do another drug test, and it's gonna have to come out, positive or negative of marijuana." And I'm like, all right, well, I guess if I'm gonna have to give up one or the other, I'm gonna go ahead and give up the one that's the worst for me. And I switched to edibles and I got off them. After 7 years, I'd got off them before. When there was a point in time when I was spending $500 a month extra on 100 more pills. So I was taking like 250 or 220, whatever it was, a month. And, sometimes when you take too many, when you abuse them, which I don't know if everybody does when they're on them, but I mean, it's definitely easy to take a bunch and, get pretty high. But when you were, running out before your prescription was up, I would have to wean myself off or taper down to where I was on actually minimally nothing, or just like half pills or the sort. So I mean, it was definitely something that ran my life, and I just got tired of doing that, and I wanted to. And this is around the time when I really thought about starting this podcast. And the name of it, Nowhere to Go But Up, I came up with that because I've started over 3 times from zero, and this last time, and hopefully that is the last time. I've built myself to where I make a 6-figure income. I have a good job. It's not necessarily what I enjoy doing, but it's pays me to where I can live comfortably. And I just totally forgot where I was going with that. Oh yeah. So I first started wanting to do this podcast, because I had lost like 35 pounds, went on a keto diet, and from there, I was having problems with my daughter's mom. We never really got along. We were together for 6 years, and I was kind of a dick the whole time. I don't know. It was, I got into something with this person for all the wrong reasons, and you can't when it's not for the right reasons to be with somebody. At some point, they're either going to notice, or you're just going to be, you're not in it for the right reasons, and you'll never treat them the way that you probably should, or that they're wanting. And so around that time, I think I left once before we had our daughter. She got, she was pregnant, and she was pregnant, and I had left just because we'd fight all the time, and I would start bullying her, or I never punched her or like close fist hit her. I never even slapped her, but I would bully her. And if I didn't like what she would say, then I would get like kind of enraged and would try to scare her into submission. And that's so foul. And when they talk about toxic masculinity, that's exactly what they're talking about. And I know that I didn't necessarily want to, I didn't want to be in a relationship that was like that, but I didn't know how to not be in a relationship that was like that, because I never had an example of what one was supposed to look like. And like I said, not blaming my parents. I mean, they, whatever. But it's the truth. I didn't have a good example. And so I would always just go with kind of what worked. And, I've had 1, 2, 3, I think it's the fourth. Wait a minute. So there was, oh no. So there was that one. So it went Teresa, Angelina, Monica, Sherry, which was my ex-wife, and then Kelly. So I've had 5 failed relationships that were all about 5 years long. This one was 6. And I've done the same thing in all of them. This isn't my only daughter, the one I had with Kelly. I also had one with Angelina. But Jordan, she's now 18, or no, she's 19. She just turned 19, and I don't talk to her. I've tried to reach out through social media and whatnot, and I just sort of, look, you know where to find me. You know where to find me if you want. I had my rights terminated when I was living in Vegas a little bit before I got into the trouble I did. But I mean, nonetheless, dude, I was in no condition to be a father, and I just didn't show up to court when it was going to happen, because I knew that she would have a better chance at a better life if I wasn't in it at that point. And it killed me, man. For the next year, I stayed drunk because I was grieving because I just gave up on her. And I mean, when I think about it now, it's kind of tough. And because of the mistakes that I made in that situation is actually why I'm so vigilant as the father I am now. I made sure when I left her mom, Sienna, who's the daughter who's in my life, when I left her mom this last time, that I was going to stay in the town and I was going to be with her as much as I possibly could and help raise her. And I have been. I pick her up from daycare every day. And her mom, we work together. Well, as best as we can. And, it's still, it's still tough. She has every right to be as upset with me, but a part of this journey that I'm on is fixing myself. And if I can't be what you need me to be, and you can't be what I need you to be, and I think we both came into this sort of not what's the word I'm looking for? Not like, I think the way that I looked at it when I got together with her is that she fit financially what I wanted in somebody else. She made more money than I did, but as I progressed through my career, I probably earned about the same hourly. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I make more hourly, but just the amount that I work makes me make less money than her. But still, I mean, in California, it's so expensive here that, two people making 100, low hundreds, it's kind of what you need to be able to survive and not just live to work. With a dual income, you can easily work to live. But like I said, it wasn't, she wasn't what I was, what I normally went for, body type. And I thought to myself, well, she's still cute in the face, so she could lose the weight. And so what I was getting involved in this relationship was my idea of what I wanted her to be. Not, I want to be with you for all of what you are. It was all of what I thought I could change you into being. And I think she kind of did the same thing. At least it felt like it. There was other things that I thought too, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. Maybe we'll get into it at some point down the road. But, like I said, I jumped somewhere else and I lost my train of thought. So I'm an advocate for marijuana because it's helped me immensely. I haven't touched meth since 2010. I don't do any other drugs other than I'll smoke some pot and I'll take some edibles. And it really helps me out. It makes me a nicer person. I engage with my daughter 100%. I have so much fun with when I'm with her. It just, for me, I'm a fan, and I think it's been lied about long enough, and I think we should start making everybody a fan. I'd much rather conversate, commune, live amongst more people that smoke marijuana than drink. So, which kind of leads me sort of to, why do I want to do a podcast? Well, I've been through a lot in my life, from being a felon to being a drug addict to, and my situation is not, it's not normal, like a lot of people, because a lot of guys that and ladies that are addicts, they can't touch anything. One thing leads to another thing leads to another thing. And that's not how it works for me. I mean, I have no desire to do meth. I have no desire to do cocaine. The only thing I've never done is heroin. And that's not really true. I've done the pharmaceutical form of heroin, but I've never done street heroin like shot up. Never shot up anything in my life. I looked at that as like, oh, well, that's Skid Row. If you're doing that, then your life is I'm better than that because I smoke it or I snort it. Well, whatever it is, whatever dumbass shit that convince yourself of so it makes it okay. I've been addicted to GHB. I've done ketamine. I've done mushrooms. I've done LSD one time. It was a terrible trip. Never did it again. Although I wouldn't object to having, I wouldn't object to using psilocybin in a therapeutic manner or ecstasy. I've done ecstasy. I've sold plenty of it. I used to be a raver. Spent a lot of times in the rave culture in the Bay Area. There's just, I think that I have a good knowledge of myself, why I've done some of the things that I've done, and I want to hear from other people that have been through some of the same, sort of situations. Have you been incarcerated? Have you been an addict? Have you, dealt with anger issues? Did you come from a broken home, a split family? Were you a latchkey kid? How was your life? How did you get through it? And this isn't going to be just a podcast about, how to get through down times in your life or bottoms. I've hit 3 bottoms in my life, and they've been significantly life-changing, and I've managed to get through them. So that's, I want to just be able to talk to people about that. I want to talk to other people that have been through bottoms in their lives, and how do you get through it? My interests, I have a wide range of interests, and I'm going to talk about all those. I love animals. I love dogs. I have a beautiful charcoal Labrador retriever. His name's Riley, and that little shit has imprinted on me like no other dog has. And he's like my best friend. Never had a connection to an animal quite like that. I RV. I crab fish every year. Dungeness up in Bodega Bay. Talk about that. Just I have a wide variety of things that I enjoy and things that I do. I'm a licensed drone pilot. I have a business, kind of a business. I'm not very smart when it comes. Well, it's not that I'm not smart. I'm just not educated in business and how to run a business. And what makes me my money is kind of what I have to focus on right now. What I found by trying to start my own business is that marketing takes up a lot of time. And if you don't have the time to market yourself or your business or your product, it's not going to get out to many people. And so I found that out the hard way. But I mean, I still have it. So I mean, I have an idea for it still. I'm not ready to toss the towel in quite yet. But the podcasting thing is, to me, podcasts are amazing. I've never experienced content quite the way that podcasting touches me when I'm listening to them. I work by myself in construction, so 8 hours a day I have earplugs or earphones in one ear, and I'm listening and working. And so I feel like I'm a fly on the wall of a conversation, of amazing people. I mean, Rogan, if you've listened to him, he's a good guy, but I mean, just anything that I've listened to, it just changes it immensely just by having it in my ear, and it feels more intimate. It feels like I'm a part of the conversation, and I absorb it way more and more intensely. And so I want to be a part of that. I have a lot to say, and I have a lot of experience in life and life lessons. And I just want to be able to bring that to people, and I want to talk to other people that have like interests and figure it out. Life is definitely a trip. My life has been a trip. I've got tons of stories of all the crazy crap I've done. And I don't think that it's helped to shape who I am. But, what keeps me from going back to that life is risk versus reward. And I think what kept me in that life was exactly that, risk versus reward. Up until, I got my career and changed everything, I wasn't risking a whole lot because I didn't have a whole lot. So, yeah, sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Not to mention that when you're doing methamphetamine, what sounds like a great idea when you haven't slept for fucking 3 days, when you get sleep and you revisit it, you realize that, dude, that was a horrible idea. So, there was a lot of a risk that I was willing to take because I didn't have a whole lot to lose. I didn't have anything. Didn't have a job. Didn't have a career. Didn't have, anything other than the fact that I was selling drugs, and I wasn't even really a good drug dealer. I was a break-even drug dealer, so I would leave, and I'd probably be owing people tons of money, and so I just move. Or I was just cool with them, and they just allowed me. All right, well, just give me what you can, and kind of codependently allowed me to, stay stuck in my rut. So fast forward to today, I have a lot to lose, and just maturity in itself plays a big part in a lot of that. Most men, women mature faster than men for sure. For me, I didn't mature until I was like 35, 36, 37. I'm 45 now, and I definitely feel like I'm behind, especially people that I went to high school with. They're all they have homes, houses, whatnot. I don't have any of that. I live with a roommate that rented me a room, and they live close by my daughter. And so I'm basically having to start over, which sucks. But at least I'm not starting over with nothing. I'm starting over with, possessions. I have a 40-foot fifth wheel that, I lived in last year, probably most of last year, or at least a year since I got it. So I've gotten plenty of use out of it. And it was, it's a nice one. It's definitely one that you could be living full time in for a year plus. It was, to me, it's too small. It's something great to do for a week, 2 weeks max. But to live in full time, it's just, and with a kid, there's no way. So yeah, I love water sports. I live by the Delta. So, I jet ski all the time, have a couple of those, fifth wheel. I think this year I'm going to try and take kiteboarding lessons, so that'll be fun. So my mission is basically going to be talking to people who have been through situations similar to mine, or whatever kind of bottom you have gone through in your life. And if you've come out the other side, how did you do it? You know, what steps did you take to find yourself and find your path? And I want to talk to anybody else that's currently in a bottom or a low point. Where are you at? And you know, how are you thinking about trying to get out of wherever it is you're at, or get out of the situation? I want to talk to people like that. I want to talk to, if you've been in, you know, if you're addicted, if you've been through addiction, you know, how did you get through it? These are all conversations I want to have. And then I want to talk about stuff too, like my interests, and talk to other people with like interests. And at some point, start having interviews with you, telling me your stories, so that can go out to other people who may be experiencing similar situations. And in that way, it could touch them like all the podcasts that I've listened to touched me, and help to guide me in the direction that I'm going, and give me the courage to put all my shit out there for you to listen to and to identify with and to resonate with. You know, we're all here trying to do the same thing. Just figure out this life thing and how to get through it. You know, we don't get taught a lot, you know, in school about how to function in life. And, you know, the world is changing rapidly. You know, in 10 years from now, it is not going to look a whole lot like it does now. I mean, it may look similar, but it's going to be very different, I feel. And that's stuff I want to talk about too. So, I mean, if this is something that you're interested in, you like hearing what I'm talking about, you want to know a little bit more about, you know, what I'm doing. Like, I'm just building this out right now. So I have to build a website. I have to do some of these other things as well. But while I'm doing that, I'm still going to be putting out episodes. I have 2 other ones that I've already recorded that are going to be released as well. Haven't figured out what day it's going to be, so, you know, whenever I'll definitely figure that one out. But if you want to email me, it's nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram, nowhere to go but up now, or at nowhere to go but up now. I believe I have a Facebook page, nowhere to go but up now. I haven't got on Twitter yet. I made an account, but I guess it wasn't active, or I didn't do something right, so they deleted it. I hadn't even put anything on there. I just tried to make the name. So I'm trying to do better on social media. It's challenging, especially when you have to spend so much time researching stuff or figuring it out. Instagram, I cannot figure out for the life of me. I get up to 300 followers, and then it jumps back down to 262. I think I'm at now, which I guess it's cool to have, you know, that many people, but it's tricky. I haven't figured it out yet. So if you want to contact me, tell me your story, those are the ways to do it. Actually, the best way would be nowhere to go but up now@gmail.com. Send me an email. And like, I do have Skype capabilities, so and recording, I can definitely listen to some of these emails and figure out who I want to talk to. And if I don't talk to you personally, and I have and your email interests me, I'll definitely mention it on there or read it on air. Just make sure you let me know, what how, about your anonymity if you want to, you know. And yeah, I think that's about it. And talk to you next week.